You have two choices. You can be the destroyer of this world, or you can be its savior.
Well, all I can say, brothers, you're gonna rot in hell for this, and the sooner the better.
Well, it's almost Halloween, and quite frankly, it might actually be Halloween. I don't know. I have to edit this still. It's, oh my god. I completely failed to make much out of that, the whole it's October, and therefore my prime month for making them sweet views. Between getting COVID and my film Dr. Deathface about to finish principal photography, none of my planned October videos wound up getting finished, which, you know, sucks. Oh, I got a little microphone shadow. I got a little boom mic shadow on my noggin there. That's fun. Well, can we turn this on? What if we just throw a little, it's still, yep. Let's just move that. Oh, then there's a cable. Okay. All right. This is fine. I deal with this on a fucking daily basis. Boop, 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 boop. That looks fine. That looks fine, right? I'm gonna assume that's fine. Anyway, while we're waiting on me to have fucking time to get all those cool, big, epic videos done, including the fucking collection video, get off my fucking mentions, I watched some movies. And the first movie I watched, well, not the first one, the latest one I watched, minus the Jess Franco I watched last night, which is pretty sick. We're not gonna be talking about that today. Was Black Adam. The most recent film to burst into my eyeballs, starring Dwayne Rocky Malvia Johnson and directed by the guy who made Orphan, The Shallows, and Jungle Cruise. You know, honestly, that should be a recipe for success. After all, Mr. Johnson is the kind of star who can probably just, you know, get anything greenlit. And director Juan Colette Serra, right? Juan Colette Serra. I definitely had time to look this up. Anyway, he has a pretty choice pedigree, all said and done. Remember, this dude did House of Wax. Fucking goated. Of course, with all the preamble, it should be obvious. I did not particularly care for Black Adam. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I do not like it. It's not a bad film per se, but it is derivative and kind of boring, and that is arguably worse than just being bad. Some good things first, though. Johnson is, of course, very good at being big and relatively charming, although his constant balancing act with being not a hero does often throw off his default charisma points. He's kind of built this thing where he's the good guy who's just kind of tough. And bringing that to the Black Adam character isn't necessarily bad, but it does bring up the question of why are you doing this anti-hero thing when the only thing stopping you from being a hero is just calling yourself a fucking hero? You know? Like, just let him be a bad guy. Like, that's like, when I first heard that Black Adam was gonna be made into a movie, I thought, all right, okay, just gonna make a movie about a bad guy who's super powered and can rip people apart. Amazing. And you know, Joker did great, so obviously movies about people doing bad things and just being bad people is fine with today's audience, so why not do it? And here, I didn't really get an answer to my question because I didn't fucking do that. Anyway, our Justice Society, which, no, is not really explained at all, is made up of pretty solid stock. Noah Centineo, I think that's how you say his name? I can't remember. Is shockingly enjoyable in his goofy Spider-Man adjacent performance as Atom Smasher.
I get big, that's what I do.
And both Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone and Aldous Hodge as Hawkman are very charming. Swindell is perhaps the standout of those three. She's definitely the most likable, which is kind of funny since her character really has the least to do. Like, fucking wind powers are only going to be very useful when, say, I don't know, a nameless rando army is brought forth by a sky beam or whatever. So it is good that she's super smart and gets to use that aspect of her character, like once. But the standout, of course, and we all know this already, is Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. I can't say the movie does him any favors, with his more dramatic moments being undermined by the screenplay's hackneyed approach, but he is nonetheless extremely entertaining as Dr. Strange Light. Also, shout out to Sarah Shahi. I'm just really, I really need to do my homework on these. I'm very bad at that. Sarah Shahi as Isis, brave name by the way, who was given a whole lot of exposition to deliver, including about 6 instances where she has to explain the film's themes to other characters. She pulls it off admirably. Mohammed Amer is also great as the comedic relief, and Marwan Kenzari, aka Jafar in that weird Aladdin movie, is a solid baddie up until, well, the third act. And less said about that, the better. Woof. Also, I really appreciate the central themes regarding anti-imperialism, even if they are presented in the least subtle way imaginable. It's cool to see a superhero of sorts specifically written for the Arab audience and to criticize not only the internal heroics of the DCEU, but also how little those rich nations who proclaim humanity really care for those dying and having their land stolen from them. It's a really cool idea, very topical, somewhat poorly executed. Gosh, I kind of just threw in a lot of the negatives in there anyway, didn't I? Suffice it to say, Black Adam is essentially just an amalgamation of superhero tropes dating back to the 90s. We even get a kid sidekick who rides a skateboard everywhere, which, honestly, one of the few positives. He's not very good, but, you know, skateboard. None of this is bad, necessarily, but when your film relies on a new approach, the idea of, you know, Captain Marvel's big bad Black Adam as a misunderstood antihero, it would be nice if any of it felt, well, new? Or surprising, or, you know, not nauseatingly risk-averse. Considering this was a passion project for Johnson, it's even more shocking that, you know, barring a few nifty previs to shit action sequences, the whole thing feels so lazily pieced together. Say what you will about James Gunn's comic book movies and shows, at least they take risks and can toss in a few needle drops that don't feel as try-hard as the Rolling Stones' Paint It Black dropped over a CGI clusterfuck masquerading as a badass murder spree.
What's up with you and this clown all of a sudden? You're like obsessed.
And speaking of murder sprees, hey, if you think I can only hate on movies with too much CGI, think again, buckaroo. Let's chit-chat about Terrifier 2, Damien Leone's horror epic, which seems to only warrant that qualifier as a means of justifying its 2.5-hour runtime. 2.5 hours! Guys, it's a fucking killer clown movie. If he can cut up a teenager like he's the protagonist of a fucking guinea pig movie, you can cut down some of those goddamn scenes. Jesus. And look, I'm not saying a slasher movie can't be well over 2 hours. I am, however, saying that the longer a film goes, the more the content needs to justify that length, and frankly, Terrifier 2 does not do that. Does Damien Leone have a great eye for practical effects? Abso-fucking-lutely. He does amazing work here and might have made the goriest movie I've ever seen in a theater. Props. And you know what? He also brought us Art the Clown, who is one of, if not the best slasher killers to enter the arena in the past 2 decades. Mad props. Unfortunately, I can already smell this thing going way up its own ass. We're 2 movies in, 3 if you count the 2013 movie All Hallows Eve, itself reusing Leone's 2011 short film, no one cares. And already, this dude is crafting an overly complicated mythology that is somehow only hinted at in this, again, almost 2.5-hour film. And this is, again, something that isn't bad on the surface, but when you consider how long scenes play and how little we really learn about anything, it's very obvious that Terrifier 2 should have been cut way down. And honestly, like, I'm not even saying, like, the plot is extraneous. I mean, it is, but just based on how long, again, all those fucking scenes go, you could get all of that information across in 90 minutes. Like, maybe, 100 minutes. 100 minutes. Cut 20 minutes off. You're good. And that includes the fucking stupid, bloody, disgusting podcast after the credits, which you don't need to stay for. Fucking terrible. But that said, it's got some incredible gore, a great antagonist, and strong work from lead actress Lauren Levera. I can't say much about the rest of the performances, but I'll take what I can get. I quite liked the mid-credits scene, which reminded me a bit of Junji Ito's work, and that's always a plus. That's a pretty mid-take, but whatever. Just get a little more economical in the edit, maybe spruce up the cinematography a bit, and this could very well be a stellar piece of horror filmmaking. As it stands, it's fine. And at the very least, a beautiful testament proclaiming that indie horror can still succeed at the box office. It's not bad, and I love that people enjoy it. I love that people love it. But for me, guys, you gotta edit your shit down. Like, take it from a guy who has 2 movies under his belt that are way too long. You gotta edit your shit down. Anyway, here's a few recommendations before I get into some of the other stuff I want to talk about. First off, Down.
The elevator. It's coming!
What? Annie!
Gary! It stopped!
This is a really interesting one, readily available on Blue from Blue Underground, along with the film it's a remake of, Der Lift, Both films were directed by Dick Moss, he of Amsterdam fame, and while I haven't watched Der Lift yet, I know, sue me, I didn't watch the original first, I went ahead and took a gander at Down as part of an October movie challenge I'm trying this year, in which I am going to fail. And boy howdy, this is 110% my shit. It's a totally bonkers 2001 joint with a distinctly European bent, starring Naomi Watts, just before she broke out with Mulholland Drive, as well as Twin Peaks' very own James Marshall. It's also about a killer elevator. Guys, come on. Killer elevator. Killer elevator. 2 Lynch staples. Also, Michael Ironside is here. Come on, fucking watch it. It is a little long. I will say that it also has an issue with just being a little too long. Has a lot of investigation bullshit in it that could easily be cut down, but still, killer elevator. Oh, also it contains conspiracy theorist baiting references to 9/11.
I think this whole thing is blown out of proportion.
Well, they almost got the Twin Towers 10 years ago.
In a film which had its release delayed because of, you guessed it, 9/11. You can't make this shit up. Killer elevator. Meanwhile, over on Shudder, there's the solid little found footage joint Deadstream about a disgraced streamer who tries to get his career back on track by staying in a haunted house in the middle of nowhere. It's a phenomenal feature debut by filmmakers Joseph and Vanessa Winter, whom also directed the To Hell and Back segment in VHS 99. Haven't watched it yet. I assume it's great. This is a really simple movie, basically Evil Dead but found footage, with a similar humorous bent mixed with pretty top shelf scares, gotta say. There is some limit to what the Winters are able to do with their budget, but wisely they never try to push it, and instead they adapt to their limitations in very creative ways. This means that the budget never really peeks through to take us out of the film. So great work, and everyone should be watching this Halloween and beyond. It's great.
I'm not falling for this Photoshop hack job.
I also finally watched Quatermass and The Pit, again for the aforementioned October challenge I'm gonna fail, and man, this shit rocked.
The demons.
It's very much a Hammer production, with all the dry Britishisms that entails, so, you know, your mileage may vary, but the core idea is one so frightening and existentially fucked that it's in my mind a far better horror film than most of the studio's iconic monster-based output. This 1967 film is one of several adaptations of the Nigel Kneale story, first broadcast in 1958 in a serial format. I should completely fuck up normal English names on purpose, considering how often I fuck up other names. So Nigel Kneale's story. It's based on the Nigel Kneale story. By all accounts, including Kneale's own preference, the 67 version, directed by Roy Ward Baker, is the best of the many takes, and I can see why Andrew Keir as Professor Bernard Quatermass is pretty iconic, and his choice for the character.
Normally I don't before noon, but...
He's again a very dry British personality, and honestly it's a crime that he didn't play the character more. If you like a more literary approach to horror, something more focused on concepts of existence rather than blood and gore, this one is definitely for you.
I'm sure we'll get along quite well.
And as long as I'm talking about movies I've watched for the sake of completing arbitrary goals, I also needed an Egyptian horror film, not one based in Egypt, but made in Egypt by Egyptians. I went with the 2019 thriller 122, the story of a couple who become the intended victims of a corrupt doctor's organ harvesting enterprise after they get in a car accident, yada yada yada, tale as old as time. It's a pretty cheap picture, but if you're looking to expand your horizons with a familiar story told through a different cultural lens, this might be for you. It's on Netflix, super easy watching, nothing groundbreaking, but an enjoyable little yarn all said and done. It's kind of like an Egyptian Lifetime original. It was also apparently presented in 4DX and was a huge blockbuster in Egypt, which, sure, why not? Fuck it. Now, one reason I started this video series is that with all the movies I watch, there's a lot that are great or interesting, but I simply don't have much to say about them, or at least I don't have much to add to the conversation. One of these is the classic 1953 Kenji Mitsuguchi horror drama Ugetsu. a film I watched on HBO Max of all places, and which met all of my expectations after years of hearing about how much of a fucking masterpiece it is. It's fucking great! A creepy and haunting story about the consequences of greed that certainly leans more on the side of drama than horror, but with an ending so heartbreaking that in a single moment, Mitsuguchi is able to perfectly marry these two genres. And yeah, Poindexter, I do recognize that horror is drama. Fuck off. You fucking know what I'm saying, you pedantic fuck. Anyway, I don't have a hot take or whatever here. I just, it's just a phenomenal ghost story and a great sister film to the slightly superior 1968 Kanato Shindo film, Kuroneko. Pretty sure I fuck it up, all of that pronunciation. It doesn't matter. Go check it out either through the Criterion release or, again, right there on HBO Max next to other classics like Eraser Reborn and Moonfall. So every Thursday that I'm able to, I have my one consistent social interaction. My friends Roger and Shannon and I, along with a few others depending on availability, get together and watch one film from my collection. The current rule, however, is that if it's someone's first time at one of these get-togethers, we have to watch a Jess Franco joint. Well, last Thursday, we watched... we had a newbie, and we watched, we went with 1974's How to Seduce a Virgin, aka Fun for Three. Two titles which don't really begin to describe what you're in for with this one. Basically, it's a story of a castration-happy rich chick who's let out from a mental hospital and proceeds, with the help of her crazy husband and their sex slave Adele, to stalk a new victim. The sort of virginous daughter of a wealthy diplomat. As is commonplace, things go awry. This is totally in the mold of the horror fantastique and sort of Sadian nonsense that Franco was attracted to, and never is this more apparent than when we get our first of many looks at the basement dungeon where our rich sadist displays statue-like bodies of her past victims who might still be alive, it's kind of up in the air, arranged in theatrical poses, admirably maintained by a handful of very much living models. Apparently, financier Robert de Nestle, some fucking guy, wanted a more real-world tone, so this is the primary remnant of the outlandish Francoisms, but it does a lot of legwork in that capacity. The addition of actor Alfred Bellew spouting nonsense and playing spy games, not to mention the overt Sadian nature of the film, also helps to maintain Franco's initial vision. Speaking of actors, Alice Arno is just such a perfect evil protagonist, one of Franco's great actresses, ably supported by Robert Woods as her psychotic husband, while Howard Vernon adds charm just by kind of being around while events take place as the mostly pretty quiet butler. Kind of weird, honestly, to waste Vernon's pedigree, I suppose, but it's cool to have him class shit up. This is also Lena Romay's first major role in a Franco joint, so it's got that sort of historical context. And she shines something fierce as the mentally challenged sex slave. She's fucking hilarious in the role, which, just has to be seen to be believed. It's available on DVD from Mondo Macabro, and I highly, highly recommend it. Finally, we come to our big one, the film many people wanted me to take a stab at, L.A. AIDS Jabber. I was actually going to do a solo review of L.A. AIDS Jabber, and I still might once I tear through all the extras on the Visual Vengeance Blu-ray. But for now, it's not really all it's cracked up to be. I'm gonna be honest with you guys.
This can't be it.
It's more bark than bite when it comes right down to it.
Why don't you two just tell me the truth, that you were sent here to harass me?
Don't get me wrong. The film entitled L.A. AIDS Jabber is sufficiently fucked up in its premise alone. Selfish, mentally unwell asshole is told he got AIDS, loses his job, and goes on a spree poking innocents with a syringe full of his own blood. Tale as old as time.
Isn't it true that AIDS can be transmitted if the blood from someone who's infected is mixed with the blood from someone who's not?
That's true. Come here, let me cut you. It's like...
It's a crackerjack exploitation yarn on a very base level. Unfortunately, it's also mostly a crime procedural.
You will get your exclusive, but only when we've wrapped this thing up.
And not the most enthralling one at that. Luckily, that aspect of the story does include some remarkably daft moments that really help the distinct lack of AIDS jabbing. Beyond those doses of comedy, there's actually A fairly adept hand from writer-director Drew Gadaris in these moments. It's kind of a mix of really well done, properly staged, and complete failure.
You want to talk about it? I pride myself. I'm a great listener.
And you know what, given more of a budget, it might actually be really enjoyable as kind of a wonky Law and Order riff with AIDS jabbing. However, it's called LA AIDS Jabber, and that is, frankly, the appeal. Cheap gore, sleaze, complete lack of political correctness, that's what the mind conjures from the title, and unfortunately, it's a small part of the overall picture. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of AIDS jabbing, but the ratio is very off. SOV cinema lives or dies on the bizarre and outlandish, things which push it beyond the medium, and LA AIDS Jabber, while enjoyable, doesn't really rise to the promise of the title or genre. Still, the focus on a female detective, undermined by her peers and pushing to prove herself against the odds, is a welcome surprise, and the final twist gives us one last dose of irony to end on, although your mileage may vary on its efficacy.
He's kind of emotionally unstable right now, and I think he might hurt himself or someone else.
Yeah, I wish I had more I could really say in positive. The Blu-ray's great. There's a ton of special features. I think you'll get your money's worth either way. And again, it is fun. You know, more fun than Black Adam, at least. Hey-o, I brought it around. Go watch a movie. Oh, you're still here. What did I watch? Here's a little recommendation for all you kids who stay after the credits. I know you were disappointed when you got through the credits of Black Adam and there was nothing there. On Tubi, I don't have any footage of this. I watched a little film called The Mummy Theme Park. And The Mummy Theme Park, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but it's the director of Plankton, which is a great little story of teenagers on a boat being killed by, I think, mutated plankton. It's been a while. I was a teenager when I watched it, but it was very formative for me when I saw it. And if you like that movie, this one's a fucking trip, man. It's completely bonkers. It gets better and better as it goes. Wonderful third act. Does have mummy action. It's a little inept, but it's fun. And if you're a low to no budget filmmaker, there's a lot of interesting tricks that are used in the film. It's from 2000, so it's a little past that, or it's a little before the point where you could really use digital techniques to get past the shortcomings of these techniques. So if you're looking for ways of learning kind of low budget tricks, that's great for that. And if you just want to have a good time, laugh your fucking ass off, holy butts, so good. So go watch The Mummy Theme Park on Tubi. Fucking amazing. Okay, now we're really done. I don't have anything else to say. Fuck off.